Chiefs pass rush had a great day against the Texans and really increased in its effectiveness, especially in the fourth quarter. Let's break down several of the plays where the Chiefs were able to generate pressure and 8 sacks today, and talk about what they were doing on these plays. So we'll start in the first quarter. There's a minute 47 to go in the quarter, and the Chiefs are up 6-3 at this point. Let's take a look at this play. This is a third down play. It's 3rd and 8 or so for the Texans. So CJ Stroud is in the gun. He drops back and immediately is pressured by Chris Jones off the edge. Chris Jones collects the sack and ends up causing a 4th down and a punt. So what the Chiefs are doing lined up here is they've got Omenihu, Mike Dana, Turk Wharton, and Chris Jones lined up as down linemen, and they have Nick Bolton coming and filling in. So what ultimately happens is the Texans account for Omenihu, Dana, and then Wharton is accounted for. Or sorry, this isn't Wharton. This is George Karlaftis. My apologies. George Karlaftis is accounted for by the center. The right guard has to account for Nick Bolton in case he's blitzing, and so that puts Chris Jones against their right tackle, who's a rookie. The Chiefs actually run a stunt. So they take Mike Dana and try to run him into the left tackle. Karlaftis takes the center and tries to push into the guard. So they're trying to occupy these 3 linemen. And then Charles Omenihu loops around and he's trying to hit the gap between the center and the guard, the A gap on the offense's right. Chris Jones, for his rush, just tries to beat the tackle around the edge. So as you see this developing, you can see here comes the initial rush. You see Dana's already pushing outside, and you see Karlaftis pushing in that direction too. Nick Bolton's coming up to make sure that the right guard remains occupied, and Omenihu is about to start his curl around for his stunt. Here comes Omenihu around, and as you can see, Chris Jones, as he comes on his rush right here, is able to swat the hands of the tackle almost immediately, get them off of him, and get around. He's already got a win. I mean, this is as quick of a win as you can get. You see Omenihu coming around, and he's trying to hit that A gap as Karlaftis tries to push the center. The center actually does a good job of coming off and at least impeding Omenihu a little bit, but none of it matters because Chris Jones has won immediately off the edge. And before CJ Stroud has a chance to figure out what's going on, he's hitting the back of his drop, and he already has Chris Jones is on him. So Stroud tries to escape but can't, and Jones gets him down for a big sack. Now, it's fortunate for the Chiefs that the defensive line won so quickly because the secondary was in quite a bit of confusion. You can see here to start, Nazi Johnson and Chris Roland Wallace don't really seem to know what's going on. They're trying to communicate with each other. Roland Wallace is then looking over at Shamari Connor like, hey, what's going on? What are we running here? Connor's trying to tell him something, and Roland Wallace ends up on a delayed blitz that is essentially makes him useless because he's not coming fast enough to actually affect the quarterback, and he's not covering anybody. I almost feel like as he's going right now, Connor's telling him like, no, don't do it. Like it's a bust. Just come back. Like look at Connor's hands here. I think he's saying like, no, don't do it. But he's gone. So if Stroud had some time, we basically have these 3 coming out of a bunch, and the only one near him to start is Shamari Connor. He might have been able to hit this. He might have been able to hit this. But look what's going on with Stroud. He's already enveloped by Chris Jones. So the pass rush here really saved the secondary, who seemed to be in a lot of confusion, letting guys run free. So the Texans might have been able to convert this, but Chris Jones did a great job getting there and getting the sack. So now from the end zone cam, remember what we're talking about. Omenihu's accounted for here. This is the tight end. Omenahue's accounted for here. Dana, Karlaftis, Bolton, Chris Jones. Now, what they try to do, Dana's going to try to come in at the tackle. Karlaftis is going to try to take the center and bring him over so that Omenahue has a chance to come around. And so let's run this. Here you can see Karlaftis is engaged with the center. He's trying to move everything over this way, and Omenahue's trying to come around. Bolton's occupying the guard, and Chris Jones is about to win already. There goes Jones around the edge. Here comes Omenahue trying to come on his stunt. The center, like I said, did a good job of kind of hanging with him a little bit and making it difficult, but Chris Jones is already here disrupting this play. CJ Stroud has no chance. Jones does a good job of not letting him escape and bringing him down for the sack. So we move ahead to the second quarter. The Texans are down 6-3, and they have a 3rd and 5 at the Chiefs' 34-yard line. Let's take a look at the play, and then we'll break down what happened. We've got Stroud in the gun. He takes the snap, and Charles Omenahue strips him almost immediately after. Shaq Mason ends up falling on it, but it ends up being a loss of about 3. So let's take a look at what happened. So the Chiefs have Justin Reed over the tight end in the slot, and they have Nick Bolton, who's mugging up the A-gap to the right side of the Texans' offensive line. So the way that it looks like things should be set up is you'd imagine that they would slide the line to the right, because then you'd have everybody accounted for here. Kind of send the center to keep an eye on Nick Bolton. Then you'd have the right guard and right tackle one-on-one over here, and the left guard and left tackle one-on-one over here. But it looks like the Texans decide to slide their protection to the left, and I don't really know how to explain why they did that. Because what ends up happening is the right guard has 2 potential people coming at him, and so typically what people are taught is you squeeze to the inside guy and let the outside guy go. And so he tries to get a hand on Charles Omenahue, who brushes by that quickly, and then he keeps his focus on Nick Bolton, who ends up not blitzing anyway and dropping back. So Omenahue ends up almost being free, like he basically just got one right hand from the right guard. So he comes in right through free, right through the B gap, and CJ Stroud has no time to do anything. Omenahue comes in right immediately. Stroud is barely back in his drop, ready to throw, and Omenahue already stripped the ball. A lot of credit here to Omenahue for getting to the ball so quickly. He has really shown prowess at stripping the ball. I mean, he had that big strip of Lamar Jackson in the AFC Championship game last year. He's done great to get his hand on the ball, but I don't understand the Texans' protection here. I'm not sure why they had the center slide left. He ultimately just ends up double-teaming Mike Dana and leaving the Chiefs having 3-on-2. Even though Bolton does ultimately bail, they have the right guard focused on Bolton, which allows Omenahue to come in free. And there's really nothing that Stroud can do. I mean, none of his receivers have even gotten going into their routes. This is such a quick win and sack. Let's look at it from the end zone view here. And again, as you can see, Bolton is making his presence felt right here. So I'm not really sure why they didn't slide the protection this way. Instead, as you can see, the center goes left, and the guard is left to decide what to do with Bolton and Omenahue. So you see him he puts his right hand out here to try to impede the path of Omenahue a little bit, but ultimately he's looking at the inside guy. If you look at where his helmet is, he's looking straight ahead at Bolton. He's the guy he's worried about because he doesn't want to give up pressure through the A-gap. He'd rather give it up through the B-gap. Well, the problem is that A-gap pressure is never coming. but he's already let Omenihu loose through the B gap. Stroud is looking left. He doesn't even see him initially, which is what allows Omenihu to get at the ball. But Stroud has no time to do anything. I mean, Omenihu just comes in free. At least Mason fell on it to prevent the turnover, but the Texans would actually miss the subsequent field goal, so that didn't really help them much either. It's strange. I think the Texans really had the protections confused on this one, and that'll happen with the Chiefs in many cases, but in this case, it seemed unnecessary. Another big sack for the Chiefs. So now we're at 41 seconds to go in the second quarter. Texans are down 13-3. And they have a 2nd and 5 around the Chiefs' 20-yard line. Let's take a look at this play, and then we'll break it down. We got Stroud in the gun. He's got 2 to his left, 2 to his right. He motions Schultz out wide to the left. Takes the snap. Steps back, looks left, looks right, and has nothing, and is swallowed up by Tershawn Wharton and then Mike Dana. So let's see what happened here. We've got the Chiefs just rushing 4. And this time, the Texans slide their protection toward Chris Jones. So they've got the guard and the center are blocking Chris Jones. Tackle on the right has Karlaftis. The guard has Tershawn Wharton. And the tackle over here has Mike Dana. The Chiefs are playing quarters coverage. So they've got 4 deep. Each guy has a quarter of the field. And then 3 underneath defenders. So when Stroud takes the snap, he starts by looking over to his left. Over here, he's got a receiver going deep and Jalen Watson running with him, and then he's got an out route. And Drew Tranquil does a great job of sticking with this out route right here. I mean, this is a linebacker running with a receiver, and he does a great job of closing that off. So when Stroud has nothing there, he looks back over to his right, and here he's got Connor running with the out route over here. He's got Nico Collins running an in-cut with Jaden Hicks driving down over that. And then the one thing he does have is his check down over here. But Nick Bolton, as you see, kind of drives down on that too. So as Stroud is surveying, Tershawn Wharton especially, but also Mike Dana, do a good job of walking their respective matchups back into the pocket. And look at Wharton walk so far back that here when Stroud is thinking about the check down, he pulls back partially, I'm sure, because of Bolton's presence, but partially because he's under duress. He notices the pressure, his eyes come down, and Wharton gets him. Also, a lot of credit to Mike Dana. I mean, he's being blocked by Laramie Tunsil, who's a great left tackle, and he manages to walk him back and then disengage here and help around the edge to get this sack. So this one was a little more of a combination. You know, the first 2 sacks we saw, one was a quick win by Chris Jones. The second was a combination of a quick win and an odd, I think protection setup mistake by the Texans that allowed Omenihu to get through. But this one was a little more of a slow burn sack. I mean, it was a great job by these 2 collapsing the pocket, but it was also great coverage by the back end that allowed the time for the sack to occur. And there you can see, I mean, Wharton just consistently, methodically walking back his guard. And then look at Dana. I mean, Laramie Tunsil's no slouch, and he's just pushing him back. And he manages to disengage right as Wharton gets to Stroud, and they bring him down for a sack. So the rest of the plays in this review of the Chiefs' pass rush are all going to come from the fourth quarter. The Chiefs really dialed up the heat. Steve Spagnuolo started blitzing like crazy in the fourth quarter, and he was extremely effective at generating pressure and slowing down the Texans. The Texans had that long drive where they scored a touchdown to make it 13-12 in the third quarter, and they didn't score again. Their offense didn't score again in the game. They did end up getting 2 points when the Chiefs intentionally took a safety while running out the clock. But the offense really struggled in the fourth quarter, and a big reason was the pressure generated off of blitzes. So let's take a look at this play. There's 10-13 to go in the fourth quarter at this point. The Chiefs are up 20-12, and this is a 2nd and 10. We're actually going to take a look at 3 consecutive plays, starting with this 2nd and 10 play. So let's take a look at it, and then we'll break down what happened. We've got Stroud in the gun. He's got 3 to his right. He drops back, and Nick Bolton's immediately in his face, so he throws it up and is unable to complete it to his wide receiver, bringing us to 3rd down. So let's break down what happened on this play. To start, Spags has both Bolton and Tranquil up at the line. So the Texans here are accounting for the fact that they may have 6 blitzing, 6 rushing, and only having 5 in to block. So it looks kind of like a cover 0 pressure, because if these 6 are coming, that means there are only 5 defenders left to guard the 5 eligible receivers. So there's no deep safety, which is is the reason why it's called cover 0. 0 people deep. So what the Texans decide to do is slide their protection to the left. So they're going to have the tackle account for Dana. They're going to have the guard account for Tranquil's potential blitz, and the center is going to slide over to take Chris Jones one-on-one. The right guard here is then going to take Wharton, and the right tackle is going to take the edge over here, Karlaftis. Bolton kind of comes up a little bit later. So see, he's starting over here, which is probably why they slid left. They were more worried about Tranquil. But then Bolton comes and inserts late. And so with their protection sliding left, they end up letting Bolton through free as the extra rusher. To make matters worse for them, Tranquil doesn't blitz. He ends up running with the running back. And so they end up having their left guard blocking nobody. The Chiefs actually only rush 5, and they have 5 to block. But since their left guard's blocking air, Bolton's coming free. I think one critique that one could make is maybe the protection should have been set up so that the tackle squeezed in and blocked Bolton, and they left Karlaftis free, because it was a little longer path. The farther you are toward the edge, the longer path it is to run to the quarterback. So typically, the last place you want to let someone go free is through the A gap between the center and the guard. The second to last place is the B gap between the guard and the tackle. You'd rather have somebody going through the C gap between the tackle and the tight end. But for whatever reason, the Texans decided with their protection to let Bolton free through the B gap. And Stroud really has no option but to just get rid of it. He's trying to throw this. He knows he has a corner pattern over here, but he has to throw it so early. He's not able to tell or get an idea. They're not on the same page as what angle he's going to break out at. It looks like Stroud thinks he's going to go a little deeper. He ends up going a little flatter, and so the ball ends up being above and behind him. Actually, the receiver does a really good job of trying to adjust to this ball and make a catch, but it's kind of a hopeless situation. It's just going to be a guess from Stroud. He's so rushed, he's just throwing it up there and hoping his guy can go get it, and they weren't able to connect. But it really started with the way that Spags played with numbers up here at the line in order to confuse protections and get Bolton to come free. Now you see it from the end zone view. They're looking to account for Tranquil and Bolton, and like we said, what they end up doing is you have Dana, you have Tranquil, you have Chris Jones, you have Wharton, and you have Karlaftis, and they're letting Bolton in free if he blitzes, which is what happens. Bolton comes in free. Tranquil does not blitz, so you have the left guard doing nothing, and Bolton's able to force a quick throw and an incompletion. One thing, too, is I think there was a little bit of confusion between Tranquil and Justin Reed. It kind of looks like Justin Reed might have thought that Tranquil was actually blitzing, and it really was cover 0, because Justin Reed went over to try to run with the running back as well. But with Tranquil going with the running back, theoretically, this could have been cover 1. Justin Reed could have been the deep safety. But I don't know if I don't know why Reed went over. My guess, it kind of looks like he thought that Tranquil was blitzing, but could be another reason that I'm not aware of. Either way, this was the start of a lot of pressure that would start coming from Steve Spagnuolo in the fourth quarter. All right, so like I said, we're doing 3 consecutive plays here. So we just saw the 2nd and 10. Here's the 3rd and 10 now. 10:08 to go in the fourth quarter. Texans down 20-12. So here, I'll look at what they're looking at. So they start by seeing Karlaftis, Chanel, Wharton, Bolton, and Chris Jones. And then, at the last minute, Justin Reed comes up and sits in the A-gap as well. Now, what it looks like is they didn't change their protections to account for Justin Reed. So initially, with it like this, they seem to be sliding their protection to the right. So they've got the center getting Turk Wharton, the guard getting Leo Chanel, and they actually have the tackle and tight end helping out on George Karlaftis. And the guard over here will get Nick Bolton, and the tackle will get Chris Jones. But at the last minute, Justin Reed, right before, so this indication right here is the silent indication that they're going to snap the ball, the guard tapping the center. So right before that happens, Justin Reed comes in, and he doesn't seem to be accounted for in their protection whatsoever, and he comes free through the A-gap, which, as we said, is the worst place to allow a free rusher. He's got a straight line to the quarterback and comes right through free. Again, C.J. Stroud has no chance. He just tries to get a little dump off to Damian Pierce, who had been helping, trying to chip Chris Jones on his way out, so he wasn't really ready for a route anyway. Stroud just tries to get one off, and it looks like Reed might have actually tipped it or hit his hand, as that ball just fluttered and died. But another time, Spags confusing the Texans' protection, this time by bringing in somebody late. So here is how things seem to be accounted for. It seems like they've got, all right, you for you, right here, and then these 2 end up blocking Karlaftis. But then at the last minute, Reed comes in, they're ready to snap it, and so Reed comes free. They don't have a quick hot option. I mean, it's tough when you have someone screaming down the B gap, especially a DB who's so fast. And Stroud has no chance and has to throw it away for the 2nd consecutive play, an incompletion due to a free rusher coming through on the blitz. All right, so here's the 3rd of the 3 consecutive plays. We're now at 4th and 10. Of note, the Texans got out of the huddle really late for this 4th down, so they did not have a lot of time to try to set anything up at the line of scrimmage. Honestly, I consider it almost coaching malpractice that they have a 4th and 10. We're talking about 10 minutes to go in the game. It's 20-12, they're down. They're at the Chiefs' 40-yard line. They weren't able to get a play in or make a decision until very late in the play clock. They're scrambling to get lined up, and they decided not to take a timeout. I don't know why you'd rather essentially throw a huge risk up on your 4th and 10 play to try to turn over the ball on downs rather than just burn a timeout in this situation. I think coaches, in many cases, I mean, we've seen it throughout the last couple of weeks with timeout usage in the NFL, they cling to these timeouts too much in these situations where you can't waste a 4th and 10 play. And when you're scrambling with a young team and that you haven't gotten things figured out, it's a really bad spot to put your team in. And, well, let's break down what happened on this one. Here, let's run it once and then we can break it down. Here, Stroud takes it off the gun, and Karlaftis gets around the edge quick and gets a huge sack. So not only do they not get 4th down, they move the ball even farther back to turn it over on downs to the Chiefs. I can't believe. If you know you're going for it on 4th down, you should know you're going for it on 4th down. Why is the play getting in that late? And once you have screwed it up, just call timeout. Why are you wasting this down? This was a huge coaching mistake from D'Amico Ryans. But let's break down the Chiefs' pressure package here. They've got 3 down linemen. Karlaftis on the edge here, Chris Jones on the edge here, and this looks like Turk Wharton in the middle. And then they've got Justin Reed up here, they've got Nick Bolton here, and they've got Jaden Hicks up over Dalton Schultz. So what the Texans do in this case is they slide their protection to the right. So they've got Chris Jones being blocked here, and Nico Collins actually helps with a chip. Then you've got Bolton, Wharton, and Reed all being handled here. But what ends up happening is they slide everything over so that the tackle actually ends up coming to try to help with Reed. And they end up having 3 here block 2. And on one hand, that lets Jaden Hicks through, which ends up not being as much of a problem because the running back picks him up. But the biggest problem with that is it leaves Karlaftis one-on-one with Dalton Schultz, who has no chance of blocking him. But this is the kind of... Now, we've seen that the Texans have been odd with some of their protection calls before that have allowed the Chiefs to get quick pressure. So maybe this would have happened anyway. But I'm sure the fact that they were rushing in a play on 4th and 10 didn't help. And ultimately, Dalton Schultz, just no match whatsoever for Karlaftis, who beats him like a drum around the edge. The Chiefs held up pretty well in coverage. Stroud has nowhere to go with the ball. And so Karlaftis just has the opportunity to chase him down and get a huge loss on the sack. But if you see, everything else kind of goes okay. Jaden Hicks is met here. Chris Jones is stoned well enough by the right tackle, but here there are 4 linemen blocking 3 people right here. And to have that and then to have this happen at the same time, like, that's just poor protection calling. Spags with his blitz gets him again. This time I feel like it was a little more self-inflicted because they were in such a hurry. So again, we can see it better from over here. They end up having... You block Chris Jones, and then since the tackle here crashes down, there are these 3, Bolton, Wharton, and Reed, and they're being blocked by these 4 linemen. Like, that's just really poor protection call. And because of that, Hicks is able to come through. I think Hicks was really just going to guard Dalton Schultz, and so he blitzed because Schultz was part of the protection. But the running back does a good job picking that up. The problem is that Schultz is no match for Karlaftis. Look how easily he just beats him. I mean, he just runs right around him. He's not even worried about engaging his hands. He's just like, bye. And the coverage held up. CJ Stroud was sacked, and the Chiefs get a turnover on downs in Texans territory. So we're now at 4:38 to go in the game. The Texans have 1st and 10 at their own 30-yard line, and they're down 23-12. Let's take a look at this play, and then we'll break it down. We've got Stroud in the gun. He's got 2 to his left, 2 to his right. Drops back to throw and gets sacked by George Karlaftis. So let's take a look at this one. So here we just have a simple 4-man rush from the Chiefs. They have Nick Bolton kind of come mug up, and I think that is important because that causes the protection to slide left, which allows both Chris Jones and George Karlaftis to be one-on-one. The center is not coming over to help on Chris Jones, which I think was the point of this, to try to get Chris Jones one-on-one against the guard. The Chiefs defensively are playing cover 2-man. They've got 2 deep safeties, and then they're just manned up across the board. They do a good job of topping the Texans' routes. The Texans try to run these parallel deep routes, and the safeties get on top of both of them, and the corners do a good job trailing. Then Najee Johnson does a good job of running with the drag route, and then Dalton Schultz comes over on an in-cut, and Justin Reed does a good job of running with that. So Stroud doesn't really have anywhere to go. But anyway, the pressure from Karlaftis ends up being pretty quick. You can see Karlaftis getting around the edge. It's not as quick as the Chris Jones sack we showed earlier, but Stroud really doesn't have a chance to even go through progressions. He's kind of looking 1 to maybe 2, and then Karlaftis is on him. And then as you see, like, he doesn't really have a lot. Brian Cook is doing a good job of staying on top of this. Jaden Hicks is coming over to stay on top of this. Bolton does a good job running into the flat, so there isn't a lot for him, and this Karlaftis gets on him pretty quickly. This is pretty good from him coming around the edge. This is just a one-on-one win. Gets around the edge, gets a sack. So a little bit of a departure from what we had seen earlier, where there were some one-on-one wins in the first half, but in the fourth quarter, the Chiefs really started heating them up with the blitz. But here they dropped back to just rushing 4 and were still able to get pressure. So you see here the line sliding this way, partially I think because of Bolton's presence, but Bolton ends up running with the running back, and then you got one-on-one here and one-on-one here. Chris Jones puts in a pretty good rush too, putting pressure, but Karlaftis just wins very quickly around the edge. Stroud is looking at his deep routes that are topped by the safeties. He's got nowhere to go, and Karlaftis with a big sack. Really encouraging to see these one-on-one pass rushes from the Chiefs' defensive line, because although we always trust Spags and we know he's going to come through with some big blitzes, he always does, but it's nice to see that when they rush 4, they're able to get some good pressure too in some of these crucial moments. All right, now we're going to show you consecutive plays again, starting with this play here with 3:27 to go in the fourth quarter. Texans still down 23-12, and they've got a 1st and 10 at the Chiefs' 48-yard line. Let's run through the play, and then we'll talk about it. Here, Stroud drops back to pass, and Bolton's right in his face. He flips it to his running back, who ends up getting back up toward the line of scrimmage for no gain. So what do the Chiefs do this time? They've got Bolton, and they've got Reed up near the line of scrimmage. And they've got Connor up over the slot. So the way that the Texans are looking at this, they've got to account for Karlaftis, and they've got to account for Omenihu over here. They end up then thinking they've got 3 for Jones, Bolton, and Dana over here. So they've got 1, 2, 3 for these 3. These 2, and then they've got the running back as the extra protector for whoever comes through. But the Chiefs are not doing exactly what it looks like they're doing. They actually have Karlaftis and Reed drop, so the right tackle is not doing anything. Additionally, they have Bolton blitz on the guard, and then Connor comes from the slot. So they're trying to overload blitz on the guard and then drop these guys off on the back end. So they're ultimately only rushing 5 after showing 6, and that 5th rusher is a guy that they hadn't really been showing as a blitzer. So what happens is the guard on the left is being left to choose between Bolton versus Connor. Typically, the rules tend to be that you take the inside guy and let the outside guy go free. And it looks like he's going to do that at the start. He's kind of looking toward Bolton and then moves toward Connor. The problem is that not only does he let someone in through the A gap instead of the B gap, which is less preferable, his running back is expecting him to leave the Connor free. Look at the running back behind him in protection. Especially after he kind of makes that initial move, the running back is prepping to take Connor. But then the guard fakes his running back out and comes and gets Connor, and the running back doesn't have time to get to Bolton, and so Bolton just comes through free. So the left guard essentially confuses his running back. They had enough to block this. They've got 2 coming through, and they've got the guard, and they've got the running back behind. But since the guard made it seem like he was blocking Bolton and then ultimately got Connor, the running back was not in position to get Bolton. And so they both end up going toward Connor, and Bolton comes free. Fortunately for them, he's able to dump it off to the running back and gain some yardage back, so it's not a sack. So you can see it from here. These two drop. So the right tackle ends up having nothing to do. The center comes over to help, and the left guard is left to decide between Connor and Bolton. And watch what the left guard does. So see, he kind of makes it look like he's taking Bolton here. And look, the running back is preparing for Connor coming through the B gap. But then he fakes out his own running back and he slides over here and leaves Bolton free. And the running back doesn't have the ability to come back and get him. Very strange. Bolton comes through free, and Stroud does a good job of just flipping this to the running back and at least salvaging some yardage so that it's no gain. 2nd and 10 now upcoming. All right, so this is the next play. 2nd and 10 here, 3:03 to go in the fourth quarter with the Texans down 23-12. Let's run it, and then we'll talk about what happened here. The Chiefs have 4 down. They're mugging it up. Stroud drops back. He doesn't see anything he likes, so he tries to step up, but gets tackled by Shamari Connor. Officially goes down as a sack because he lost 1 yard. So the Chiefs, again, are showing pressure. This time they're showing Connor, Bolton, and Reed here, and they've got the 4 down linemen. But what they end up doing this time is Reed and Karlaftis drop out. So again, they only rush 5. They've got Chris Jones, Amenahue, Bolton, Connor, and Mike Dana on the edge. So this time, the Texans end up sliding protection. So they end up losing initially Karlaftis and Reed. And so they have these 2 linemen not really doing anything, but the right tackle comes to help out on Chris Jones, and the left tackle comes to help out on Charles Amenahue. They end up letting Connor loose. So this time they actually did what we thought they should do last time. The guard takes Bolton, they let Connor loose, and the back picks him up. So they actually picked up the pressure pretty well here. Problem being that nobody was open. So as Stroud drops back, he has like across the field if he wants to really try to launch one for a shorter gain. But otherwise, everyone's pretty well bracketed, and Stroud steps through and thinks that he can kind of get outside and get some yardage here, which he had been doing a good job of doing in this game. He did pretty well with his legs, but Bolton did a good job coming around, and Stroud ended up cutting back, and that gave Shamari Connor enough time to get him from behind for the sack. So this one, again, even though there was a blitz called, the Texans actually picked it up pretty well, but the coverage is what really allowed for the sack to happen. That and some good contain on the front end from Bolton. So here, as you see, they do get the overload here, but it's 3 linemen and running back on 4 rushers. On this side, Chris Jones is there with a double team as the tackle comes back to help Dalton Schultz. But they picked it up pretty well, and Connor is kind of slowly getting through, but by this time Stroud sees no one open. He knows there's a blitz and he tries to run. And look at Bolton doing a great job getting around, which is what forced him to cut it back, because there was some green grass over here. But Bolton did a good job as his initial rush wasn't working, coming around and understanding that this gap was open. This is a real cerebral play at this point. He's like, I see the gap. He gets around, and the hesitation allows for Connor to take him down, and the Chiefs get another sack. Now we again have consecutive plays to show you to close out our review of the pass rush. This first one is with 2:01 to go in the fourth quarter, a 2nd and 2 at the Chiefs' 5-yard line. Let's run the play and then we can discuss. We got Stroud in the gun, can't find anywhere to go, and ultimately gets sacked by Felix Anudike-Uzomah. So what happened in this one? This one is a simple 4-man pressure. Nothing exotic from Spags. You can see the Texans are going to run a route combination where they're going to have an out route. They're going to have Schultz come in, and then they're going to have 2 in-cutting routes over here. And the Chiefs are just going to blanket with basically a kind of a cover 4 principle. They're having 4 deeper and 3 underneath defenders. So Stroud takes the snap, hits the back of his drop, and doesn't like what he sees. And at this point, it really seems like the pass rush has just gotten to him, because he's not in any trouble yet in the pocket, and yet doesn't have the patience to wait. You can see his eye level go down. You'll be able to see it even better on the end zone view. But right about now, his eyes drop to the rush. He's not looking at a receiver anymore. He's trying to get out. And I feel like that's really the mark of a quarterback that has been just rattled by a pass rush throughout the day. He's not able to kind of survey, which is unfortunate for him, because John Mechie is about to pop open right here. And if he hangs in there and takes a hit, he's probably going to have a touchdown right here. He's just got to give him, even if you throw this with anticipation over here at this point, that can be a touchdown. But Stroud wants nothing of it. He's not looking at his receivers or anything right now. He's looking at the pass rush, looking for a way to escape. That's what a good rush throughout the course of a game, and for the Chiefs' case, really throughout the course of the fourth quarter especially, they just mentally wear you down, and he wants nothing of it. Him hanging in the pocket allows Anyudike Uzama to go from rushing around to disengaging and coming back through in the B gap, and he gets a big sack right there. You can see it really from this perspective as watch Stroud, like at this point he's looking for someone to throw to, and watch when that changes right here. His eye level goes down. He initially sees this gap in the B gap, so I think he's trying to get out. But ultimately, like, his mental clock is going. If he had just stood in there, I mean, he probably would have taken a hit, but he would have had Mechie running over, and they would have probably scored a touchdown. So it's unfortunate for the Texans, but the pass rush finally got to Stroud, and that led to this sack. And now we've got the very next play. 1:57 to go in the fourth quarter. Chiefs up 23-12, and the Texans now have a 3rd and 10 at the Chiefs about 13-yard line. So let's run this one and see what happens. We got Stroud in a shotgun, 3 to his left. He's got the running back to his right and Dalton Schultz, the tight end. They shift. Stroud takes the snap. He's looking to his left, and Karlaftis gets him again. Another big sack, bringing up 4th down. So what happened on this one, as you see again, we've got a 4-man rush, nothing exotic with the blitz. And again, the Chiefs run that quarters shell. So they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and they've got the 3 underneath defenders. The Texans keep Schultz in to block. So ultimately, all their routes are coming from this side of the field. And so you see they have an out route from Nico Collins, and they've got a corner pattern over the top of that, and just an in-cut here from John Mechie. And so the out route in the corner a little longer developing, especially when Stroud's trying to figure out the leverage, like where exactly they're going to break and at what angle, depending on the coverage. So he needs a minute in the pocket. And so he drops back, hits the back of his drop, and again, he's starting to get a little squirmish. He steps up a little bit where it wasn't really necessary. And Karlaftis is able to break through and get the sack. I think, Stroud would have pretty much been in trouble in any case, even if he stayed back. I think Karlaftis probably would have found his way through this running back. But it was another situation where they slid the protection all the way over to the left. Again, I'm assuming because Bolton came down here. But the protection slide resulted then in Karlaftis being blocked by a tight end and a running back. and he just made him pay. So Stroud has to wait. This isn't a quick route combination. It's 3rd and 10 anyway. He needs a little bit of time. He realizes it's collapsing because he's got Karlaftis come in. He steps up, which improves Karlaftis' angle to get to him. And he just doesn't have a chance. If he had another half a second to a second, he can try to throw this corner route over to the pylon. But Karlaftis closes quickly. And this is really an example of how scheming things up. Having Bolton up here, getting the protection to slide left leads to Karlaftis being taken by a tight end and a running back, which means that for this longer developing play, Karlaftis has enough time to beat that double team of a tight end and a running back and get to Stroud before he's able to get a throw off, leading to 4th down. You can see it here again. You see the check being made here, likely maybe in response to Bolton coming up to the line. Bolton drops back. They slide left. Here's the tackle coming in left, and Karlaftis is just on the tight end. Running back goes to help out, but that's just no match for Karlaftis. Look at him split through, break through, and Stroud waiting for the chance to throw his corner, gets sacked. The Chiefs' pressure was relentless all day, and as you can see from this review, from many different ways. A lot of it was the way that the Chiefs managed to line up and confuse the offensive line in the 4th quarter. But there were a lot of good individual wins from the defensive line too. So although, most offensive lines will probably be a little bit more on top of things than the Texans line were, there were a couple miscommunications or questionable decisions that we talked about through this review. Steve Spagnuolo, though, has shown the ability to confuse offensive line protections throughout, even veteran quality offensive lines. They just might not make as grave errors as the Texans did. But even if that comes into play, it's nice to see guys like Omenihu, guys like Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, even FAU making individual wins in the pass rush, and hopefully that will continue through the playoffs.